All right, welcome to another podcast episode of the Business Academy podcast. Ethan Daneberg here, joined once again with our partner in crime, Quentin Terpstra, here at the Business Academy. And today is a very, very, very important topic discussing moving from an insurance-based practice to a cash-based practice. Now, Quentin really is the expert on this, and I want to have him kind of share, why would a client, or a doctor, I should say, move from an insurance-based practice to offering cash services? And what are cash services? What is a cash practice?
Well, so if we look at a few things, reimbursements keep going down.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, now, going to a cash-based practice is not for every practice. And we'd have to look at why would you want to do that, and does it make sense in your area? Some of our clients, they've got great reimbursement. They've got they'll see an average patient visit that might net them over $100 per visit.
Yep.
Right? For chiropractic. And some states, some areas are like that. But then you've got other areas where, they're getting $28 for a visit, or, or they're being cut down, or you've got an insurance company that will come in and say, well, this is how many visits it will take to get your patient well, when the insurance company has never even seen the patient.
Right.
Or there's a play that was done by the insurance companies where they hired some chiropractors as the American Specialty Health Network,
Right.
to then come along and say, well, now we're going to tell you, because a doctor needs to tell you how many visits you can get and how that would go, and what does that look like. And so then the insurance companies are now, because the insurance company as a non-doctor can't tell you how many visits, but they can hire a chiropractor and can tell you this is what that looks like in your area. So then they're saying, well, to get this patient well, they're going to get well with 6 visits, but they haven't even seen the patient.
Yeah, and it's pencil pushers and corporate executives who are interested in the bottom line determining what that is, with kind of hired gun chiropractor to make that decision and sign off on
Right.
whatever that managed care 5 visits or 6 visits is going to look like.
Right. So I don't think there's any chiropractor out there who went to school to be, an extended arm of an insurance company to go about doing that, right? Or to take their orders from an insurance company, right?
Yeah.
Most of the chiropractors I know, they went into this because they had something personal where their life was changed significantly, right?
Yeah.
That they then decided to become a chiropractor.
Yeah, almost. I mean, I might have met out of the hundreds of chiropractors and providers I've met over the years, I think maybe 1 or 2, made a decision based on it might be a good career option. Every other one, 99.999% of chiropractors I've ever met had a really impactful personal story that was affected positively because of chiropractic, and they wanted to give it to others.
Right. Yeah. So you look at that purpose of, wow, this changed my life. I want to go change so many more people's lives with this.
Yeah.
What's this going to do? How are we going to? Then they go into the profession. Then they're running into these obstacles all over the place, because we're up against, big medical, big insurance, big pharma, all these other factors that are in there. And the more of those that have an impact and are guiding where to go with your practice, the less your real honest to God help can go out to the patients and the people that you want to serve.
Yeah.
And so what I notice with a lot of doctors is there is a factor of, we've got a model. This is what this is. This is how people are paying. And they're scared of changing that.
Yeah. And they're scared of the reality, right? I think everyone knows the reality is there's 3 really important monetary statistics regarding a practice that are important not to ignore. Reimbursements are going down. Coverages are getting cut. Inflation is going up.
Right.
That's a reality that I know every chiropractor watching this in most states, but across the entire board with inflation, is happening. And I think that's the monster under the bed no one wants to look at. And then, like you said, even when they finally do go, that's right. No wonder I'm kind of month to month, or I can't get ahead, because reimbursements are going down, coverages are going down. My time is also going up, doing more paperwork to get the handful of visits I can get. And then also inflation recently has been going up. It costs a ton more to hire employees. Basic expenses are going up across the board. And then they go, but now I'm scared to change. I don't know, what do I do? I think you've heard of that. You've had a lot of those conversations. Like, I know the reality, but
I have a lot of those conversations. So then you look at this and you say, well, so I saw a study from Chiropractic Economics that came out maybe earlier this year.
Yeah.
And it said that the average cash fee for an adjustment is $67. Now, I talked to a lot of doctors, and their fee is a lot lower than that.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of 48, 50, 55.
Right?
Yeah.
So now, if your fee was $50 5 years ago, that $50 right there, just on the fact that inflation has gone up 21% since that time, right? That fee right there should be $65, $70 at least, if not $80 for an adjustment.
Yeah.
Right? So that should be your cash fee. So what does that mean when we say inflation has gone up, right? And we've got different factors that say, inflation has gone up, costs are more, whatever. Well, when you go to the grocery store, right? It costs you more to buy your groceries. When you're buying a house, it costs you more to buy a house. When you're buying a car, it costs you more for that. When you're at the pump, it costs you more to do that. So now every one of your employees, it costs them more to do that.
Their rents are going up too.
Their rent's going up. Right?
Yeah.
So, it used to be you could hire somebody for $13 an hour.
That wasn't that too long ago.
That wasn't that long ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what happens if you put out an ad for $13? Chick-fil-A starts at $18 an hour now.
Wow, that's a high school kid,
right?
With little to no job experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's crazy. I didn't even realize that. $18 an hour.
Yeah. So that's what that looks like. I think California just passed a law that minimum wage for a healthcare employee is $25 an hour.
Right. That just passed this year.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know when that's implemented or how that all goes and all of it. But okay. So that means your costs are going up in the business. Your rent's going up, right? The cost of doing of marketing, all your costs are going up.
Yeah.
And so if you look at that, first of all, if you're charging $50, for an adjustment, well, that $50 is not the same as what it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you've got an insurance company that's paying you even less than that, because those insurance companies, while the premiums are certainly going up, you're not seeing the amount that they're reimbursing you for that same service. You're not seeing that go up either.
Right.
Right.
They're not giving you as a practice owner a cost of living adjustment in their reimbursements to you. If anything, they're doing the opposite.
Right. Yeah. They're doing the opposite. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what's happening with that insurance. So now, if you look at, so here's another stat that I just saw in Chiropractic Economics, was the average reimbursement from what you bill to what you collect is 63%.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, let's take 63%. So, all right, so that means that you're reducing your fee by 37% in order to do that. Okay. So, if you're reducing your fee by that much, another way to look at that, and I would say a better way to look at that is a marketing expense. You are saying that because I take these patients and I don't have to spend money and effort and whatever.
You're listed as a new network.
Because you're listed as in the network.
Yeah.
That's a marketing expense.
Right.
Right? Now, we do a lot of marketing, but I don't think I tell any patient they should be any office should be spending 37% for marketing, right? That's a really expensive patient to bring in.
Yeah. I mean, unless it's something that's a $15,000 care program for something, maybe you would look at dumping a lot of money to that. But that's a big marketing budget, not for.
Well, even a $15,000 patient, you're not going to spend $5,000 per patient to get in the door, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
point.
So that's a lot of money to spend on this, right? If you're actually reducing your fee by that much. So what we have to do, and we look at these things also in our financial prosperity seminar, right, where we do a lot of training on that, and we look at what these different things are. But we'll look at what does this look like? How do we, where do we go with this? Now, there's a lot of people that are then going into, well, let me just start selling niches.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's great, and that's a great service to be doing. Now you're going to a certain percentage of the population to sell them on a service that they need. And they're going for a service that's not being covered by insurance, and they're going about doing this, right? Or a lot of people will go into integration. And integration at one time paid phenomenally under insurance, but those reimbursements came down.
Same thing happened, yeah.
Different services. I remember, when people would get paid $300 for a trigger point injection in integration.
Wow. Yeah.
Which they'll get $40 for in these states, right? And it used to be that you could do all this rehab and have, a lay person doing some of the rehab under, a higher license, a nurse practitioner or something, and they could get paid for these things. But that's not the case anymore. So even an integrated practice has got to have a major cash component that goes along with this, right? So, but like I said, not every practice should drop out of insurance, and some areas it makes sense. Some offices in some states are, getting a much bigger reimbursement.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, in many of the practices that we see that are very insurance dependent, well, what do you do for marketing? And I'm sure you see this as well, right? What do they do for marketing?
They get referrals from their posts on the in-network on the insurance platform that they're an in-network provider,
right?
And perhaps they're getting referrals from other people that also have good benefits. They're referred to as an in-network provider, so they get a few referrals here and there. That too.
Right. So because they're spending such a big percentage of their revenue on marketing by being in the insurance carrier, they don't have the revenue to be able to spend 10, 15% of the gross revenues of the practice on marketing, paying for a marketing person, going out doing events, doing other marketing on social media,
sure,
or out doing talks or different things like that. Because that money's not there,
it's already tied up. Yeah,
right. That's already tied up. And then the other thing that many of these offices maybe are not thinking about and not doing is reactivations.
It's a good point. I mean, I was talking to a group earlier. I was in a seminar with just a handful of offices, and we were just doing a really simple workshop on reactivations. And I went back to the basics, and I said, who here called at least 20 of their former patients in the last week? And one person in the room raised their hand. And I said, how many files do you have? Well, I don't know. Take a guess. 10,000. How many files do you have? 15,000, 8,000, 6,000. And I went, wow. Nobody, I mean, again, the simple thing is nobody's assigned. We discussed this on a different podcast. Right? There's not a role and responsibility assigned to reaching out to reactivations of former patients. It's not getting done. Sometimes the phone can feel like a 50-pound dumbbell, right? It's hard to pick up and go do. Yet it's one of the easiest things to do because most of your old patients love hearing from you, right? And half the time they were just thinking about you that day and they just got into a car accident or just had an issue with their hip or something came back up and they have a reason to come back into the office. But that simple idea of reactivating old patients back into the office, simple and easy to do, that's not assigned to a specific person in the practice that has a role and responsibility and expectation to get it done, just doesn't get done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then, in looking at well, how would you get out of insurance? Like, oh my God, it's whatever. So if we just confront this head on and we just look at it, and we can go into this in a lot more detail, and we do, and we help our clients to get into it. But as a real basic sort of a thing, you got to market. You've got to get out and start talking to more people and start bringing in more people. The person who walks in your door today has no idea what the last person that just walked out your door, what their financial commitment was, what their program was, what they did with that.
So you got to have a marketing strategy.
You've got to have a marketing strategy. And then you've got to have a report of findings, because here's the next thing is that if you are spending money to get new patients in your door, let's say it costs you $100 to get a new patient in your door. And if you don't get that person onto a care plan, the lifetime value of that person is maybe 3 visits, right?
Yeah.
So in insurance, if you're getting, let's say you're getting $50 a visit and you spend $100 to get that patient in, and you just got you just made 150 off of them. Well, you need a hell of a lot more new patients in order to bring that in.
Correct. Yeah.
But if that patient really needed a lot more care, right? And, the doctor will then say what that is. But, in order to really get there, let's say they needed 3 months worth of care. And let's say that was 24 visits and it's a $2,000 plan or something like that. And you spend $100 to get the patient, and and you brought in $200, let alone all of your goodwill, great customer service, all the rest of that. You've got a lifetime chiropractic patient that's going to go along from there.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Now that makes sense to be spending your money on the marketing, right? This is where that's going to come about. But if we just look at this and we say, okay, so when we look at, so if you want to go from insurance over to cash, I'd say the best thing is, you've got to look at the numbers. Look at what are those numbers that you have right there. Okay, so let's look at Blue Cross. Let's look at United, Cigna, Aetna, whatever other local insurance is there.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I bring that patient in, I'm collecting on average, and we should look at, all the patients in that plan over that period of time. You can take 3 months, period, or you can take 6 months. Okay, good, over that period. Okay, on average, I collected $28 a patient from that one. And I collected $50 a patient.
Just to be clear, this isn't what you build.
No, this is not what you build.
Grab the what you build number and they go, I'm billing out $80 a visit, right? Or $60 a visit, but they're collecting 32 or 28 or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. Right. So then we look at these different things, and then we also look at what percent of the practice is this insurance.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So we might find that, well, here's this one, and there's a real small percentage of the practice that's under this insurance, and this is where and this is how we're going to go about doing that. And now we're going to get rid of those ones.
Gotcha. So let's say Blue Cross, we should like, oh my gosh, we got 40% of our patient volume is Blue Cross. I can never go to network with Blue Cross, and then you're finding out you have an unprofitable reimbursement average.
Well, so then don't go drop in Blue Cross immediately. I mean, that's 40% of your patients right there that you're going to be losing, and you've got to get a lot more marketing going.
So the marketing strategy is going to be key. You got to have that moving. And then, but if it's a smaller amount of patients, let's say Aetna is going to be 10% of your patients, and they're reimbursing $30. That's a pretty easy decision.
That's a pretty easy decision to do that. Now, when we do that, there's a lot of goodwill. I mean, people love their chiropractor, right? I mean, your patients, they've been coming to you for a while. They love the fact that they can use their insurance. Obviously they like not having to pay for it, but they're not all just going to leave when you decide to go out of a plan.
Totally.
And this is probably the biggest fear that people have in getting out of plans is that, they're going to go somewhere else. But, when you literally change that person's life and do miracles for them, they're going to continue coming to you.
And I think if you do it with tact, right? I've seen some offices rush it. And it's like, you don't need to rush it. You have this loyalty with these patients. Yes, they like using their insurance, but they also love what the relationship they have with their doctor.
Right.
And then you say, okay, great. At this date in the future, and you make it really clear that, that you're going to move in a different direction with that insurance, and you have multiple opportunities to have conversations with that patient about it, at the front desk, table side, before you're just going to rip the Band-Aid off tomorrow. It's like, they would be upset if you're taking their insurance one day, they come over their next visit and they say, oh, we're out of network, we're going to take your insurance anymore, right? But if you give them enough advance notice as to the direction you're going to go, you can have those conversations with those that are concerned about it. You have a rapport with them. They have trust with you already. They see the benefit and value of coming to your office. The majority of patients will be okay with that. They'll figure out a way, you know? And it'll give them time to figure out a way too.
Right.
I noticed that, I don't want to get too sidebar here, but I noticed that with like a fee increase, or for if you do have a cash fee schedule, increasing those fees is, a lot of doctors are really scared. I'm going to lose all my patients, right? Or no one's going to sign up for care. And it's really simple. I mean, those that have enough time to understand that the fees are going to increase $3 a visit or $6 a visit, or whatever the amount is. The doctors that are doing it now, most of their patients are saying, I was going to wonder if you're going to be raising your fees. Everything else seems to be going up too.
Yeah.
And most of your patients, they'll be okay with it. So whether it's insurance or a fee increase or changes in the office, again, I think the main thing is, to your point, I think everyone listening to this has built a good rapport with their patients to know that you're not going to lose everybody because you make a change.
Right. So when we do this, what we look at is if you really don't handle it that well, maybe 30% of the people are going to go away from that.
Right.
Yeah. Now, let's go back to that earlier number, 37%, right? If you're collecting 63% of what your cash fee would be, right? So if you lost 30%, you're still making more money.
That's a good point, because that 37% was what you weren't collecting because you were in network.
Right.
Based on,
Right.
Yeah.
So then if your fee is, $65 or $70 a visit or whatever that looks like, and you're doing that, now you're seeing less patients and making more money and opening up more space in your schedule. And again, the new patients coming in, they have no idea what the last person paid. So if you're doing that, and if you're losing some percentage of those patients and they're going off and whatever, again, it's rare that it's going to be as much as 30%, depending on, your patients really like coming to your office.
Yeah.
Now that's where that's going to go. And now you can really start to increase your profitability that goes with that. And to your point, your patients know that you're running a business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Your patients know that, you've got to be able to pay your staff and that salaries are up and this and, whatever. And we've got to get out of that fear point of it because the cost of healthcare is going up. Right? And so if you've got a third-party payer here that will not give you more money for it, sure, you could try to call the insurance company and negotiate a better fee for it. Let me know how that goes. Or you could just decide, well, hey, we're not going to be doing this particular insurance any longer.
Yeah.
And this is where we're going to go with that. And now you'll, really start bringing up.
It's funny. We were in a business mastermind with a number of our practice owners. And this is a while back, but it was funny because they were asking questions and they were troubleshooting different things with each other and sharing best practices. And one of the docs says, "Yeah, does anybody here have any luck with like renegotiating insurance contracts? My reimbursements are going down." I remember everyone just looked at that doc and went, it was just like you could hear a pin drop, dead silence. And then some docs started to giggle and they're like, "Why are you playing that game anymore? It's time that you make a change in your office." And that doc that asked that question kind of had that light bulb, like, there's no amount of picketing Aetna headquarters or Blue Cross Blue Shield headquarters give us more benefits. That's going to change or renegotiate insurance contracts. It's usually going to be you being in full control kind of your destiny and moving, out of network or moving towards a cash office, and then having a way to attract new patients, convert them onto care effectively with a great team that gets them excited about it, being comfortable with raising your fees appropriately on cash fees so you're getting reimbursed what is profitable for your business. And then you mentioned earlier, the importance of, adding more value to your clinic, right? If there's other conditions that you can help people with outside of your main program, that also adds value to your clinic as well. So you can treat conditions like, whether it's, going to be decompression or neuropathy, or there's other things you can do that are all cash. to add to the equation of the value of your business. That only helps your bottom line, and you diversify people you're helping. So all these things are going to be important. But I think to your point, there's two really important things you have to do. You've ran the numbers. You've decided which insurances are not profitable. You work with the Business Academy. You find ways to successfully move away from those insurances. But now you got to have new patients come in the door.
You've got to have new patients come in the door. And you've got to be able to have a good, solid report of findings.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I mean, the patient a patient that is, there's nothing coming out of their pocket, or there's not much that goes with it, your report of findings is not as important. The more you go to selling something where they're going to have to lay out their hard-earned cash for it, the more you've really got to go into really laying out what is going on with them, how is that affect all the ways that's affecting them, bringing that patient up through the awareness scale, and letting them see that there is hope and that you can help and that you can do something, and that they're really demanding that improvement. And once that patient is up past demand for improvement, now you can do something with them. Yeah. If you're like, this is the way it is, and just get going on care, your percentage of patients that will get onto care, they don't feel like they're really truly cared for in your office, and you're going to lack with that.
I notice a lot of times in the industry, there's always a shinier object, right? And I was at a practice years ago, and there was this big machine in the corner collecting dust, and it's a big thing. I learned it was called the Magnosphere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and as you sit down, it's got this magnetic energy that helps to decrease inflammation, that kind of stuff. It's probably 20, 30 grand, and I asked the doctor, what's that thing over there? And he goes, oh, yeah, that thing. I taught at a convention one time. And he probably, leased it out or took a business loan for it, or maybe paid for it. And he didn't know how to, drive traffic or new patients to it. He didn't know how to sell it. He didn't know how to integrate it into his services that he already has. And it was this bright, shiny object that would have collected income and provided value, I'm sure, in some way, and is not going to get billed through insurance, but it just sat there. Yeah. It didn't have a marketing strategy. He didn't know how to sell it. He didn't know how to put it along with everything else. And as a result, it became kind of like just a dead piece of equipment. And I see it a lot in practice too, where if you don't know how to market your business or have a good marketer there, which the Business Academy I know just trains, it gets people competent in driving in new patients, but also you don't know how to sell your services, then you might have the bright, shiny new object or the bright, shiny idea. Niches are kind of a big thing these days, adding niches to your practice. But we find a lot of, insurance-based practices that have never had to sell an idea or a program to a patient, but they know they need to add more to their office. They might add neuropathy, they might add decompression, they might add functional medicine or a weight loss program, and it just falls flat. Or a Magnosphere just falls flat because they don't know how to sell that. But then the Business Academy members that have been selling their services for years and have been trained with systems on how to get a staff to really get a patient excited to invest in their own health and not necessarily use their insurance, they just kill it with these things.
Absolutely.
They add a piece of equipment, it makes money within 3 months. They add a new service, new patients come in the door, and you add $10,000, $20,000 to your revenue a month. That's a very regular story in the Business Academy when they've made the decision to move out of insurance networks that are unprofitable for them and add other cash services. I want to ask you one more question too, Quentin. We do have some clients that, as you mentioned, are in states that have really good reimbursements for insurance. It's only a handful, and it's not a lot of them, but the ones that do. I think of one of our amazing docs up in northern Maine, right? Maine has great reimbursements up there, so you're really smart to be a network if you're in that state. But they still, you did a great exercise with them, and you helped them find not just maximize what you have, but they'd added tens of thousands of dollars to their practice revenue by then adding on other services as well. And you did a whole exercise with them. So how important would you say is it, even if you're in network with great benefits and great reimbursements, how important is still to offer cash services in your office?
So, well, that's a great point. We did a financial prosperity seminar, and we went through a lot of that. And even with the insurance, they had great insurance, And then they had some federal programs that they were still taking some, Medicare, Medicaid, so forth, that they were still taking some patients from that. And, what they were getting from one patient to the next was about 4x from insurance.
Wow.
Yet these people were on the schedule, and this office had a 2 to 3 week waiting list because they're taking these federal patients. Now, in that case, you can, I can suggest a few things. One is you could say, there's different rules and regulations of what you can take and so forth. But you can also say those types of patients will go onto the schedule at this particular time. Mm-hmm. And therefore, your waiting list for these patients that will bring you a lot more, now you're opening up more space there.
Right.
And there's only so much space, and there might be a waiting list for those other patients.
You might have a 4-week waiting list for those patients because you only have so many slots, but then it opens up more blocks of time for your other patients that are
for your other patients that will pay a lot more, for example, right? Because so and some offices are in rural areas. There's nowhere else for those people to get help.
Sure.
But our clients really want to help those people, and there's something that needs to be done with them. Some of these older population have been paying into the system for a long time, and they really want to see that these people are getting help.
Yeah.
So that's there, and that's important. But if you're doing that with any patient, there's a report of findings that has to be done. There's other things that are not covered by insurance that the person needs. And many times, if you're so into the insurance, you're not looking at all these other things that the patient needs, and they're not even being offered. So you've got to have them in place, and you've got to offer them. And in order to do that, the doctor has to be able to not have so much of everything on his own shoulders. Case manager, office manager, different people are in the office are able to handle different functions within the office. And by doing that, you could start doing, decompression, shockwave, laser, foot orthotics, supplements, all of those different things. It's very important. And the more that you can do with those that's still congruent with your identity and your practice, and that you're not just trying to sell them an additional thing just to sell them something and for the money aspect, but because that patient truly needs it.
Right.
Now we're able to do so much more for the patient. And because that patient has such a great relationship with your office, of course they're going to come in and they're going to do that right there in your own office.
Yeah, so true. Well, I think that in chiropractic and in the holistic health field and industry, we've talked so much about how the healthcare system, when it comes to how patients are being treated, has been broken.
Yeah.
We know that, and that's continued to be the case more and more. The more new patients that come in and say, "You're my last resort," I've been through the system and I've been chewed up and spit out, and here I am. We know that, but I think now more than ever, we've been seeing how broken the insurance system is here in America, right? And even in other countries too, but especially here. And it's not going to serve, that model is not going to serve alternative healthcare very well from this day moving forward. It's becoming more painfully evident. And I think overall, the general populace and patients are starting to wake up to that as well. They're starting to see that Medicare is not going to be doing anything more than just managing my symptoms and putting me through this system. My premiums on my insurance are going up, deductibles going up, my coverages are getting lower. I want to use it, but I can't. If I use it, it costs me more. And when I do use it, with the quality of care I'm getting is not solving my problem. And I'm just getting kicked down the road. And people are starting to wake up that they themselves also have to, as a consumer, have to exit this rat race of what the big hospital, the big pharma, and the big insurance system is. And I think now more than ever, they're starting to wake up and they're starting to go, I know my insurance does suck. It is terrible. I need to make an investment in myself and my health so I can be in full control. It's one of the objection handles we always help our clients with, right? When you're offering a cash service that isn't covered by, a service that isn't covered by insurance, and the patient says, well, I just want to use my insurance. I'll only do what my insurance covers. And they have a chronic, degenerating, debilitating condition. Many of our clients who have learned how to communicate, connect with new patients at a high level, and really be able to help them see the value, not just in the services they offer, but the severity of the patient's problem. When they get to that stage in the conversation, we've had many doctors or many case managers, in some cases, just go, you know what, John, I get it. I wish your insurance covered this as well. But the reality is, the reason you're here today is because of what your insurance offers you. Period. And they just sit back, the patient goes, I know, my insurance sucks, the system sucks. And they go, it is what it is. Let's start taking care of you. Let's get you back to living your life so you're in full control of it. Let's make that investment now, today. The patient goes, all right, what do I got to do?
Yeah.
And they're ready to make that investment. And I would say that patients get it. They get it. And so I would want to make sure the doctors know, or the practice owners listening know, that don't worry, it's not just you and your awareness of this system. Your patients are starting to see how broken this thing is too.
Patients see it. COVID brought that about.
Yeah.
It's one of the few benefits of COVID.
Sure.
Is people realize, that major medical system is not there for their own betterment, their own health, and they've got to look, outside of that.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of ways to communicate that to a patient, but, people are becoming more and more aware of it. The biggest factor that I see that we lack is the doctor and the practice owner getting over their fear of rejection, their fear of losing, their fear of change. And that's what's keeping people stuck. And those that have gotten over that have seen, big expanding practices, many more patients, many more, much more revenue coming in, more staff, more patients, more expansion, which is there for the taking if they can get over that fear.
And that usually just comes down to a decision to change, a decision to improve, a decision to find a new way.
Yep.
And I know that you've introduced hundreds of doctors and practices to systems and strategies and training that will, as they make that leap into making that change, that they have a support system and a model that they can kind of leap into.
Yep.
And I've worked with, same thing with offices around the country, and it's not always easy, but it's simple. It's really simple. And I think insurance-based practices will take comfort when they get there, knowing like, this is how simple practice can be.
Yeah.
Like operating a cash practice, it's remunerative. The patients are better. They are more invested. The practice operations are simpler. You're actually making money. Your staff are happy. They're on purpose. It's a simple, more fulfilling model at the end of the day. But you're right. It is a big decision. If you can overcome that fear, make a decision, walk into a support system and a model of guidance to get you there with the Business Academy, then you'll see that life can be a whole heck of a lot better running a practice than how it is right now.
And that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, 100%. So anything else on this idea of insurance to cash that you wanted to cover today?
I think we'll cover this some more in a lot more episodes, and we're also going to be covering it in our upcoming seminars and workshops and going through that more.
Yeah.
But, we've got a plan to take any office through that as a client of ours that we'll do with that. And when you get through the other side of that, any office is that much better off.
That's right. So we'll not only train the doctor, train the staff, provide systems, guidance, coaching, implementation, just step by step, we'll hold their hand on the whole process.
Yeah.
Awesome. We couldn't be more excited to have you at one of our upcoming workshops and seminars. The light at the end of the tunnel is there for you and your practice, and your patients will thank you for it. So that's it for this week's episode of the Business Academy podcast. Great having you on board with us listening today, and we'll go ahead and see you on the next one. Take care for now.